This is Ready, Set, Reiki, a podcast about Reiki, the universal energy life force. From the curious beginner to the seasoned master teacher, welcoming all systems, all lineages, and all levels. Reiki is a journey and not a destination. And on this Ready, Set, Reiki journey, I refer to myself as a guide rather than a host, as I too am traveling, supporting others, and learning on this Reiki journey as well. And with that said, I am your guide, Tracy C. Wright. Now joining me today is Jenny Stinson. Now, what an amazing person she is, and I'm so glad we're able to connect on this journey. Now, she has been a teacher and a student her whole life. She teaches people, not subjects, and she learns from teachers, not books or courses. She has found it is much about the teacher-student connection as it is about the material being taught and learned. In her first career, she taught high school students. But after she left the public school classroom, she began learning and teaching many more things, including the ICRT Licensed Reiki Master Teacher, the Azui Holy Fire 3 Master, Reiki Master, Animal Reiki Master, Certified Medical Reiki Master, Karuna Reiki Master, Crystal Reiki, Theta Healing, Integrated Energy Therapy Practitioner, and Advanced Reiki Drumming. And she has both been that her whole life teaching. So thank you, Jenny, for joining me on Ready, Set, Reiki.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's begin our journey. So many wonderful and amazing modalities that you are skilled in. So let's find out about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am originally from Louisiana, and that's where I did my English when I was an English teacher. And I left the classroom after 14 years or 13 years to be the supervisor of the English and language arts teachers. And so I did that for a little while, and then I moved to Chicago, and where I started working for a publishing company. And I did that for a little while. But while I was in Chicago, I also taught Dale Carnegie courses. And when I was a kid, there were all manner of books in our house. And it's interesting that before I could even read, I would pick up books off the bookshelf and pretend that I could read, and then make up stories about what I just read. But some of the books that I picked up were Dale Carnegie books because my mom had studied Dale Carnegie. And then all these years later, while I was in Chicago, I ended up teaching Dale Carnegie. So that was part of my journey. And then I've taught things. I've learned from Ed Foreman, who taught the Successful Life course, from Jack Canfield, who did the Skills Facilitating course. I took 8 days of classes with Jack Canfield, who was the chicken soup for the soul. Yeah. So, and then I also was a marathon running coach. So I love to teach. That's like my passion. And so I just continued to do that. And when I came to Boise, when my first grandkid was born, that was 17 years ago. I know that because he's 17. That's when I found out about, really is when I found out about Reiki classes, because my uncle, who was a Catholic priest, was a retired priest at Notre Dame, and that was only 3 hours or so from Chicago. And I would visit him often, and he was like, I was so close to him. He was about the coolest person ever. But he told me that he had had cancer, and that he didn't tell me when it was happening, but that he was cured. And that was great news. And it was like, what did you do? And he said, well, I found a Reiki master and started going to see this Reiki person. And he said it was a few months. I don't know how long it was exactly. This was in the 1990s, which sounds so long ago.
Yeah.
It was in the 1990s. And he said, you go to this person and they put their hands on you and you feel this energy surge through you. He said, and it's a miracle. And he went, and then he goes to the doctor. He went to this guy for a few months, goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him, asked him, what did you do? And he said, basically, I just went to this Reiki master. And he said, well, keep doing it, because the cancer never came back. It was gone and never came back. And so I kind of just tucked it away. That was, many years ago, and thought, you must have to be something really special, like extra gifted, whatever, to do this. And as you know, the internet was not what it is today. And, it was hardly anything. And then couldn't find a whole lot of information on it. There weren't a whole lot of books on Reiki. So I kind of just tucked it away. And then when I moved to Boise is when one of my neighbors came over and said, oh my gosh, I just got my Reiki certification, and it was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like, here it comes again. Yeah. And so that's when I started kind of looking into it. And then it wasn't until sometime later after I moved here that I decided to go ahead and pursue it. And found a teacher who was trained through the ICRT, because I'm all about standards.
Yes.
And I wanted it to be legit. And so I found a teacher, and it was the first time she had ever taught. And 3 of us signed up, and I was the only one who showed up. Aww. She was super nervous, wonderful, kind person. And she asked me if I wanted to leave and come back when she had more students. And I said, actually, no, I'm here. Let's just do this.
Wonderful.
And so I did that. And it was before Holy Fire. So I came home after being trained for 2 days and wasn't really sure what I was doing. So I practiced on neighbors and friends and family and stuff until a year later, I decided that I was going to I was visiting my daughter in Pasadena, and I still did not have Reiki books or anything like that much, had found a little bit of information. And so I walk into a metaphysical bookstore in Pasadena, and there's a whole rack of Reiki news magazines. I was like, what? There's a magazine? So I got the magazine, I got the back issues that they had, and which were only a couple, I think, and read them. And in there was an ad for 5 days of Reiki. So if you've already had 1 and 2, you could take the 1 and 2 and then followed by the master. And I took that with Michael Baird and Laurel Gaia in Sedona. So it's like bonus, it's in Sedona.
Yeah.
So I took it in Sedona, and then literally that changed everything. It was Holy Fire 2 at the time. And so I took that with them and came home, and it was really transformational, because it was like I hadn't even had it before.
Yes.
It was amazing. And so about a month after I got home, I started to set up my first class. And so I've been teaching ever since.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So would you say that you found Reiki or Reiki found you?
I would definitely say that Reiki found me. No doubt. No doubt. And I think I had been led that way for years, since I didn't even know what it was back in the 90s. Yeah. And then it just kept showing up.
Showing up on your journey. And for our listeners, the Reiki News is a wonderful resource to have. I mean, to keep contemporary, that's also important, as things come up in our industry, such things as like legislation, things like that. So it's good to have that resource. And, sometimes, we get used to being in our way of doing things. And then when you open that magazine up, I think I opened it up and I was like, oh, Reiki for a mouse. I didn't even think of a mouse, right?
I know. Yeah.
It's a new way of looking at something. And, Reiki for gardening. And so that kind of plants a seed to things. So yeah, a lot of great experiences and so wonderful. So
interesting that you, but interesting that you mentioned that the legislation. I am actually on the legislative committee for the ICRT that monitors what goes on in the whole country regarding Reiki regulations.
Right.
So
I remember that because I watched I couldn't attend in person, but the retreat, I real know that you were
Mhm.
on that as well. So,
It is so important.
mhm.
So
Yeah, to know these rules and laws
it
because things
is.
are changing. Things are
It is.
changing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting as you're going out and you're working, and I'll give you an example. Like, I've been in El Paso for 2 years, and so, out teaching, and I get to network with some people that have been doing this for years.
Hmm.
And, my studio's getting together, and I needed to get a certificate to play the music because Spotify is illegal to play in the studio, right? And I had mentioned it, and some people were like, really? Like, I've been teaching in studios for years and didn't realize that. I'm like, well, there's someone that can fine you. You can get fined for this you know and so having this information, being armed with knowledge as a practitioner, is so important to be aware of that. So it's wonderful that the International Center of Reiki brings that together and has that team to keep everybody updated. So that's why it's so important to get the Reiki magazine, to check in with the
Hmm.
International Center of Reiki, because that is this one source and everything is cited too. That's why I like it so much. When I learned Azui Rahiho, my information that I had in my manual wasn't cited, but then I got the healing touch, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he can back everything up. Like, this is where
Hmm.
I got this from.
Yeah.
Here it is here. This is where you can find that. So that's a great resource to have for that.
And
So
regulations are different from state to state.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
you just have to kind of check what you have in your area.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. We had Jules Davis on as
I
well.
know she's awesome.
And she was going and saying a little bit of information about it. So it's
Hmm.
so important because people were just so excited that they want to go out there and hands on, and
Hmm.
your state may not allow that, and you have to do another way, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So as you are out, you've been teaching for many years now, part of the ICRT. As you're out there, what is a common misconception about Reiki?
I think what I find is that people, because they don't understand what Reiki is, they see it as something scary. They see it as something that's um, like not congruent with their religious
Mm,
beliefs.
yes.
Um, that it's something secret because it has symbols, secret symbols. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I have found. But then I have had people take my classes from all religious backgrounds,
Right.
as we all have, and they discover that it's complementary to all religions. It's no religions and all religions.
Yes.
And so it's not anything religious. And once I think people understand that, then they accept it a little bit better.
Right. 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 I know my mom struggled with that. She has a background of being Bible based. She would color herself, a Christian, and she just saw it's Japanese, it's kanji, it's Buddhist. I don't see how that's connection. And really,
Hmm.
when you look at the foundation of it, love and service, that's
Hmm.
what Jesus did on earth, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
many people struggle with that. So you have been a part of so many people's healing journey, with their challenges, with their struggles. But what has been the biggest challenge or struggle you faced in your very own healing journey?
I think that probably one of the things that I struggled with at the very beginning was, and I'm sure it's been said many times, is imposter syndrome.
Mm,
And really listening to my own intuition, because I came from a really structured background, and teaching, and very um, evidence based. Even though Reiki is, there's lots of science behind it,
sure.
um, but um, and so it's like, who am I to be doing this?
Hmm.
And um, and even the whole time I've lived in Idaho, my identity in Idaho, because I didn't start teaching, like I didn't teach English or anything here, um, was coaching. Um, runners, marathon training and ultra marathons. And so my whole identity here was associated with the running community.
Mm.
And then when I sort of came out of the Reiki closet, it was at first, it was like, oh, I didn't know you did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in recent years, it's been more like, that is awesome. You know, I know what Reiki is,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't surprise me that you do that. And so it's been an evolution for me.
Yeah.
And to trust my intuition, to be confident, and to know, I mean, but that comes because when you work with Reiki, you see that Reiki works.
Yes.
And it just takes a little while,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to fit into that world.
Right.
Yeah. And to realize that we all have this gift and this ability, and it's just a matter of accessing it and
Right.
accepting it and embracing it.
Right, right. I also have a background as a teacher as well, and I'm sure, you and I both, being very studious and studying and doing things, and it, that imposter syndrome kind of seeps in where you feel I need to learn more, I need to study more. And it finally got to a point in my journey where I'm like, okay, I'm just tired of reading and studying, that you just need to do. And through the doing is where the confidence lies. So
Absolutely.
hovering over that book and studying and watching the videos, you still keep doubting yourself, but you have to get to that point where you say, okay, you know what? I just got to move forward. I just got to do this. And, with TikTok, with Insight Timer, this visibility of showing this is what Reiki is. So like my kids knew what it was. Like, oh yeah, I see this on TikTok and this person does it and that person does it. So there's not that stigma too much as it was, say, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, So it's like become almost mainstream.
Well, and I laugh and I tell my students, I said, Reiki it's mainstream now.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe that's because all the people I hang out with know what it is, and everybody I associate with now knows what it is.
Oh,
so it seems mainstream. It's not quite there, but it's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So what do you wish your younger self knew about Reiki?
I was thinking about that, and I tell my students that I'm a recovering Catholic, but I don't know that. I think I've probably known without knowing what it's called. I think it's semantics.
Yes.
I think that everything is basically the same because it boils down to love.
Yes.
And so I think that I have always been on the path. I know that everything that I've done up to this point has brought me to where I am. And so just like, hearing about Reiki in the 90s, that was part of the seeds that were being planted.
Yeah.
When I read Dale Carnegie books when I was a kid, when I read Agmandino books when I was in high school, all these things that taught me things along the way, I think that's all been part of this path that I'm on. So Wayne Dyer always says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think that that's sort of the way I feel about it.
Right.
If I had known, I did sort of know early, but maybe I wasn't ready. And so I think everything has happened in perfect timing.
Beautiful, beautiful. On your journey, you have had some amazing teachers. I mean, it's just incredible as you read the list of modalities that you have studied. So many familiar names on here. And but when it is time for you to get an energetic tune-up, learning from these teachers and teaching, so many students yourself, what are some qualities that you look for in a Reiki practitioner?
The main thing is that the practitioner is doing their own work.
Very good.
That they practice what they preach. that they are constantly trying to, find their best self, be their best self, their authentic self. And that's the most important thing. And I do have some practitioners that I go to, and we trade back and forth. And I do get Reiki regularly. So I feel like they need to be doing their own work.
Good. Does the length of time somebody's been a practitioner, does that matter to you?
No, it does not. And I like to sometimes go to my students, and because I want to be able to refer people to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I want to go have a session with them before I send someone to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, it doesn't matter to me. I think and especially with the people that are coming through the classes now, just in the last few years, they are coming in at such a high level already that it's like, I look at when I started and it was like, I was just so like not where they are now.
Yeah.
But I think with the raising of the consciousness of the planet, and the younger people that are coming through are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Just amazing.
And children too.
I've trained 2 of my grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're 12 now, and they are amazing.
Right.
We trained them when they were 8.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have a natural affinity for this.
Right. Yeah. So everyone out there, if you're listening, there is Kid Reiki out there.
There is.
Now, did you edit that? Did you edit the book for that?
I did.
So
I did it.
A little birdie told me that you edited.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to take the class online in March.
Beautiful. I took the pilot class. So I did. I took it.
What a team.
What a team. It's amazing. And I've taught some Kid Reiki classes, and I'm going to be leveling up some Kid Reiki teachers when they gave me the green light to go. So I'm having that. So
good.
Up in Pittsburgh, I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh, and we're going to do a training there. So there we go.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And are you teaching kids and the Reiki master class? So you're teaching?
Yes, I've taught kids. Yeah. So I have in my little space also. I'm going to start it again as well. So I've had a couple.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So as a ICRT teacher or an LRMT,
yes.
What advice would you give someone who's just entering this work?
Wow. I think you just have to listen to your heart and just go where Reiki takes you. I always say that, Reiki always has other ideas.
Yeah.
And when I started teaching, I've always taught in my house. And I could get probably 5 or 6 tables easily set up in my living room. And then I started getting a few more people in some classes, and my husband said, we're running out of space. Maybe you should consider like renting a space. And it's like, I like to do it here at my house because I like to cook lunch for people and keep them all together. And I love to cook. So, and so we had a whole side yard that we really weren't using. And so he said, why don't we just add a room on where you can teach all your classes? And it was like, what? I mean, he's the one that came up with the idea. And so we just celebrated in July our 2-year anniversary of having added on the room. And we added on like 555 square feet. And I did not plan that number, but that's the way it turned out. And now it comfortably can hold like 8 tables.
Beautiful.
And that was not the plan. Reiki had other ideas.
Well, it was Reiki's plan.
It was Reiki's plan. And so we just went with it. And it is just such a wonderful space now. And it's an extension of the little tiny treatment room that I have in my house.
Yeah.
And so this is that's the peace room. This is sort of like the peace room center.
Wonderful.
So, and it's awesome. Yeah, but Reiki has other ideas.
Other ideas.
Always.
I mean, you probably never imagined standing where you are now as you began your life, in your journey, to
No
high
way.
school teacher, because I worked in the high school as well.
Yeah,
Never imagined, right? Where it
never.
takes you, right?
No. But that's what I would say. Just, listen and listen to what messages you get and just go with it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So as you were an avid reader, as you were little, what books do you recommend?
Oh my gosh. Um, there are so many books. Well, usually the book I recommend is the one I'm reading right now. And so whatever book I'm reading, that's the one I would recommend to people because it's fresh on my mind. And so the book that I'm reading right now, and I'm actually working with some people in sort of a little group, we meet and talk about the book, is John Ruskin, Ruskan, Deep Clearing. And it is such a great book. And it fits perfectly with Reiki because it's all about feeling the feelings so that they're not stuffed down, so that you can bring them up and you can clear them. And that's what it's about. And so that is one that I'm reading right now. One of my favorite books, and I've read everything I think that Wayne Dyer has ever written, but it's The 10 Secrets of Success and Inner Peace.
Wonderful.
And I mean, I sometimes forget that the things that I say a lot of it came from that book.
Yeah.
Like you can't give away something that you don't have, or have a mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing.
Right.
And so many of the principles, and I've listened to it on audio, so many miles that I've been running, and it's just in there,
Right.
So that's also one of my favorite books. But then I love Raven Keyes, The Healing Light of Angels.
Yeah.
And so none of those are specifically Reiki books,
Right.
but I have a whole library of Reiki books.
Yeah.
And whatever I can get my hands on, if it's a Reiki book, I'm going to read it and see if it's good.
Beautiful.
But those are three, I don't know, of the books that I just have made a big impact on me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So do you offer any classes, events, trainings?
Sure. I mean, obviously the typical Reiki classes, the 1 and 2, the Master, the Karuna. And then my daughter and I, and we do Reiki drumming. We learned from Shelley and Mike Hammermeyer.
Beautiful.
So we do some Reiki drumming.
So inner compass.
And yes, inner compass Reiki. Then I do I do, they're not official classes yet, but they probably will be. I've had a lot of people ask me. I teach the teacher.
Beautiful.
So once they've gone through the master class, then I help them get ready to teach classes.
Yeah.
Because that is a passion of mine, is to teach the teachers.
Yes.
And because then they can just affect so many more people. And so that's a big thing. And I'm developing some teach the teacher classes, whereas I've always just done it sort of one-on-one as they needed it.
Right.
But more and more masters are starting to come through here and wanting to actually teach.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that kind of keeps it's just a daunting thing, is to take the material and then now what do I do with it?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I kind of walk them through the process. And so that's an upcoming class for 2025. It's going to be a teach the teacher class. And then we do a class here at the Peace Room called Reiki in Clinical Settings.
Nice.
And I work with a couple of nurses and my husband, who is been in marketing and branding his entire life. And he actually has learned level 2 Reiki. So, I mean, he does know Reiki and he's been living with it. So he helps with that class on the marketing end of it.
Beautiful.
And it's more of a workshop. It's one day. And it's sort of inspired by Raven's medical Reiki class, but very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so interesting on the journey, like in my own journey, excited to go out and share Reiki and, do the sessions. But the Reiki, as you had mentioned before, showed me that I was more of a teacher.
Hmm.
right? And so you have that as well in you where you find yourself kind of helping and supporting and lifting up the other teachers more than
Absolutely.
having having also having the one-on-one sessions, Reiki sessions, but it seems more coming that these are teaching opportunities. So those of you that
Sure.
are listening, if you feel like, well, why am I not getting all these clients coming in for these Reiki sessions? Maybe consider that you are that teacher where you're meant
Mm.
really to go and just teach and level up individuals. So it's
Yes.
another way of looking at it.
And in addition to the regular classes that I teach, and I teach animal Reiki as well,
Yeah.
um, but I'm starting a project in January, and I am bringing in some of the Reiki masters that I have who do want to teach, and this is
Yeah.
kind of a stepping stone to their own teaching. But we're going to be working with the Idaho Justice Project,
Oh,
and we
beautiful.
are going to help women who have been formerly incarcerated.
Mm.
Um, and we're going to take small classes. Um, and these other teachers that I'm bringing in, so we'll have 4 women who have been incarcerated. We're going to have 4 teachers, including myself. So we'll have one-on-one, and we are going to teach level 1 and 2 to these women, not necessarily so they can go out and do Reiki, but they can,
Yes.
but also to heal the things that they've been through.
Right, right.
Um, and so we're kicking that off in January to help these women re-enter the community.
Congratulations. What a beautiful gift to give them too,
Mm.
helping them heal themselves because when you're in service, you're healing. And when you're
Yeah,
healing, you're in service. So how
absolutely.
beautiful.
Yes.
And teaching and learning Reiki, that's a skill that you're
Yeah.
teaching them how to fish, right? To go
Yes.
out to
Yes.
be able to have that business when they get that level 2, to open things
Yeah.
up and see where it
Yeah.
goes.
And these beautiful Reiki masters who are going to be working with me are donating their time. We're teaching
Right.
the class pro bono. And
Beautiful.
so they're doing this to help these women and to
Yeah.
give them a support system
Right, right.
and to keep them um, in the community and not going back.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right, because then they can just pause and have the
Yeah.
Reiki flow instead of choosing anger, right? Just for today, I will not get
Yeah.
angry, right? To
Yeah.
bring these tools in for
Yeah.
them to kind of navigate through life, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So where can we find you? Online, in person, if someone's interested in a training, a session to work with you?
It's thepeaceroom.love. That's our website, thepeaceroom.love. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Um, yeah, that's the website's the easiest, quickest place.
Right. And Reiki.org.
And Reiki.org. Yes. 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 Oh, yes.
All right, well, very good. Well, that ends the first part of our journey together. And now I'm going to guide you into the next part, which are questions from listeners and social media. So here we go. Number 1. Can you tell me about your certification and medical Reiki master with Raven Keys?
Wow. Yes. That was an amazing experience. A few years ago, a friend of mine who is a Reiki master had written to Raven and asked her if she could come to Boise and teach a class. And Raven wrote medical Reiki. Um, and so she called her back, called my friend back and said, yes, I'd love to come to Boise. All you have to do is just get 10 people. And so I had just built the Peace Room. And so our big my audition. And so we decided to have it there. And we ended up getting 16 people. Um, and so it was a 2-day class with Raven, and she brought her partner, the wizard, Chris. And so it was just the most amazing, amazing class. And it was really based on Raven's experiences going into the operating room, which there are a lot of places in the country that are not really ready to let Reiki practitioners go into the operating room. And so a lot of it was based on her experiences, but it was just the most wonderful class. And Raven was just the most amazing person. In fact, the following year, she was going to have a retreat. She was putting on a retreat in the UK. That's where they live. And So Mark, my husband, and I were going to go on this retreat with Raven. And I had actually, when Raven was here, talked to her about teaching the teacher and coming up with a curriculum, because my background is in curriculum design. I've got a master's in curriculum design. And so it would kind of bring some legitimacy to building a class. So we had started working on it. We'd had Zoom sessions, we'd had phone calls, and Mark and I were going to go on the trip with her. And then 1 month before the retreat, Raven had a heart attack and died.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we didn't go on the retreat, obviously, because she wasn't leading the retreat. And then we hadn't finished working on our plan. And so there's been a lot of iterations of what's going on with the Raven Keys Medical Reiki International and the teaching. And Reiki Works is still, it's a nonprofit, and they're still doing studies, all kinds of research studies on Reiki in hospitals. And so that's kind of where we formed this. Well, Chris, her partner, called and said, you already have, 5 people or 6 people that are going to take that we're going to take the next class with Raven at the Peace Room. And he said, the show must go on. He said, I got a message from Raven and she wants you to teach that class.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, I wanted to say no, but I said yes.
Yeah.
And so we taught another class based on what Raven taught, with just like she did it. And then I talked to Chris and the teachers who were helping me, and we're not going to teach it that way anymore, because it's just there's nothing standardized.
Right.
And as far as I know, it hasn't been yet standardized according to Raven's teachings. So that's where we started doing just a 1-day workshop on Reiki and clinical studies. And it includes more things besides the operating room, all areas of medical.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So number 2, what is theta healing and how do you incorporate it into your practice?
Theta healing is it's a modality. I think that so many of the modalities are so similar, and it's just a difference in technique. And whereas Reiki, you get the person relaxed and they get into an alpha state, and that's where, studies have been shown that, hooking them up to EEGs and stuff like that, that when you're receiving Reiki and doing Reiki, you're in more of an alpha state. And then theta healing takes it to a little bit slower, more deep relaxation, and it works primarily with the subconscious, and it works with visualization, where you go on a visualization, which is about your imagination, and then you get into a theta state, and then you kind of go to source and request that the healing take place. And so it is receiving the healing from source energy, or the creator of all that is. But that's the same thing that Reiki is. You're just on a different brainwave level. And so to combine the two, and how I've used Reiki, theta with Reiki, is that a lot of times I will take them on a meditation at the beginning, get them into a little bit deeper relaxation in more of a theta state, then start the Reiki session. And then also involved in theta is muscle testing. So you can muscle test before and after to kind of validate it. So yeah, it's taking negative beliefs that you have, uncovering them, sort of like the deep clearing book that I mentioned, uncovering them, acknowledging them, releasing them, and then replacing them with a more positive, affirming belief.
Beautiful.
That's in a nutshell. It's so much more, but just surface. That's theta healing.
All right. So ICRT program, International Center of Reiki. Your LRMTs have completed a licensing program requiring over 1,000 hours of studies and practice. The program takes 3 to 4 years to complete. Curriculum has been designed for Reiki masters who choose to dedicate themselves to teaching and practice of Reiki at the highest level. All maintain an active Reiki practice and are committed to empowering themselves to use others through use of Reiki. So our third question, How did you benefit from applying and being a part of the ICRT program?
Wow. So the licensing program is intense. And I think, like you just said, it is for people who really want to do Reiki full time, make it their business, make it whatever. And I'm basically retired. And so this is sort of my retirement gig. And so I had the time to do it. I'm a lifelong learner. And like you said earlier, we're always trying to like up our game.
Mm-hmm.
And when I take on something, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably, that applies to like my ultra running. We used to have a saying, anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. Like I say that, like, yeah, I eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
listen,
so,
Reiki, I'm there. So we're similar. Yeah.
yeah. So what's the next level? What am I going to do now that I've done these other things?
Yeah.
And I hadn't really, like I said, I hadn't intended to do that either. And I was taking a class, my Karuna class with Colleen Benelli. And Pamela Blanc was actually in the class doing her co-teaching for the licensing program.
Yeah.
And she said, have you thought about going into the program? And I said, no. And she said, well, you might want to think about it. And she says, you have this, all the requirements.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, maybe I do. But it was like, no, I don't know. And then I thought about it, and I'd had several students say, well, why don't you go through the licensing program so that we can be professional members?
Mm-hmm.
And then if we want to go through the program, then we'll have all the credentials and somebody's got to do it. And it's like, well, I thought, I looked into it and I decided to go ahead and do it. I had Mike Hammermeyer as my mentor. And when you have Mike, you get a twofer. So I got Shelley.
You got with that. Him. Yes.
Yeah. And it was a perfect match. And so I went through the whole program with them. And you teach a lot of classes, and you review. And I've always been a student of teaching techniques. I will take classes online just to see the techniques that people use. And so it was great because you got to see other people's techniques. And then now I got to meet all the other licensed teachers, and I could learn from some of them and their techniques. And it's just been great. I've learned so much from so many people. And just the nicest people, and ideas to develop my business. And it's been amazing. It's been life-changing with the people that I've met, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just learning from all their techniques. It's just the people.
Yeah.
It's just the connections that has been wonderful. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. So that was our last question. As we've been talking, is there anything that you'd like to share or something you may have forgotten? You can take the time now. The floor is yours.
I think you pretty much covered everything. And just to know that Reiki has other ideas, and just to listen to your heart.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Jenny, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join me on this Ready, Set, Reiki journey.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Wonderful. All right, my amazing listeners, if you would like your question featured on Ready, Set, Reiki, reach out to www.readysetreiki.com. Also, if you're interested in yoga, online or in person in the El Paso area, or a Reiki and Reiki trainings, reach out to Feather Sister Wellness at www.feathersister.com. I'm Tracy Seawright, and this has been Ready, Set, Reiki.